Picture this. You're looking at a dimly lit room. Fairy lights are strung across the wall. There's an inflatable pool filled with warm water, and a mother is in the final stages of labor.
Right. A very specific vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The aesthetic is incredibly peaceful. It looks perfectly, beautifully natural. But what you can't see in this highly curated social media post is what's deliberately missing from the frame.
Yeah, the invisible details.
Right. There is no doctor, there is no nurse, there's no fetal heart monitor, and there is absolutely no plan for what to do if a medical emergency suddenly strikes. So welcome to our deep dive into the free birth movement.
It is a striking image, honestly. And I mean, if you've ever scrolled through social media and felt targeted by an algorithm telling you to, reject modern interventions and go natural, you know exactly how seductive this aesthetic can be.
Oh, 100%. It pulls you in.
But the medical reality hiding just out of frame is what we're exploring today.
Yeah, that terrifying collision between human biology, a very real emotional desire for autonomy, and this incredibly polished online aesthetic. That's the core of our deep dive. And we are drawing today's insights from a really brilliant essay by Lev Neymotin, PhD.
Right, from the Uncompressed Thinking channel.
Exactly. Neymotin is basically analyzing a forthcoming fall 2026 article by Dr. Boris Petrikovsky, who is a highly respected international obstetrician. And Neymotin makes this confession right at the beginning of his piece, which I found so relatable. When he first heard the term free birth, he thought it meant, like, financially free.
Which is a completely logical assumption, right? I mean, you hear free birth and you imagine some kind of humanitarian public health initiative.
Right.
Like a service providing skilled maternal care to families who, can't afford crippling hospital bills.
Yeah, a charitable thing.
Yeah.
But instead, it is a growing fringe movement found across the US, the UK, Australia, Europe. We are talking about millions of podcast downloads and millions of YouTube views.
It's massive.
It really is. And it's dedicated to this ideology where pregnant mothers intentionally choose to give birth at home without any medical professionals present. And I mean, not just skipping the hospital, but actively locking trained midwives and doctors out of the room.
Yeah. And to understand the sheer danger of this trend, we really have to look past those beautiful Instagram filters and, confront the raw, unyielding mechanics of human biology. Because the entire movement rests on a single foundational belief.
Right. The idea that it's all natural.
Exactly. They believe pregnancy and birth are completely natural processes. Therefore, because they are natural, they are inherently safe and should be left entirely alone.
Which brings us to the natural equals safe fallacy. It's incredibly common, but think about it like foraging in the woods.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. You can walk into this pristine ancient forest and find a wild mushroom growing out of the earth. It has never been touched by a chemical, never seen the inside of a factory. It is 100% natural.
Right, totally pure.
But if you eat the wrong one, that perfectly natural mushroom will systematically destroy your liver in 24 hours. Nature is magnificent, but, it is not merciful.
That is so true. And taking that mushroom analogy straight into the delivery room, Dr. Petrikovsky's central medical premise is that nature has absolutely no built-in safety net.
Wow, yeah.
Like, nature does not monitor a fading fetal heart rate when a baby is suddenly deprived of oxygen. Nature does not magically stop a postpartum hemorrhage when a uterus fails to contract.
Right, it doesn't just fix itself.
No, and it certainly doesn't perform an emergency C-section. I think we have romanticized the concept of nature to the point where we forget its actual design, which is fundamentally about population survival, not the survival of the individual.
Yeah, that distinction is crucial, and human biology specifically makes birth incredibly perilous. From an evolutionary standpoint, human beings are caught in what anthropologists call the obstetrical dilemma.
The bipedal issue.
Exactly. We evolved to walk upright on two legs, which required our pelvises to become much narrower. But at the exact same time, we evolved to have massive brains.
Which means human infants have incredibly large heads.
Right. So you were literally trying to fit a very large object through a very narrow angled passage.
Which is uniquely difficult in the animal kingdom. And Petrikovsky uses animal data to shatter this illusion that wild, unassisted birth is a flawless process.
Yeah, because you would think wild animals have it all figured out, right?
Exactly. Animals who have been giving birth naturally for millions of years without hospitals. But they don't have it figured out. Wild forest macaques, for example, lose a massive percentage of their offspring during labor and the first year of life. Even large, incredibly robust apes face severe, often fatal complications.
Yeah, the sources actually mention a critically endangered western lowland gorilla at the Philadelphia Zoo. She was experiencing this prolonged, obstructed labor. And in the wild, where things are purely natural, she and that baby would have simply died in agony. But because she was in captivity, a team that actually included human obstetricians stepped in.
Wow, human obstetricians.
Yeah, they used forceps to safely deliver the baby gorilla. A human obstetric intervention saved a wild animal's life.
That's incredible. And Petrikovsky also details the mechanics of labor in large mammals, like cows. A cow can experience a failure to complete the second stage of labor.
Like it just gets stuck.
Exactly. The calf might be partially visible, but mechanically it is lodged at the wrong angle.
So it's like a complex mechanical puzzle where a piece is just wedged tightly.
Right. And pure force, which is what natural contractions provide, will just break the piece or tear the machinery.
Ouch. Yeah.
A mechanic, or in this case an obstetrician or a veterinarian,
Yeah.
knows how to reach in, assess the geometry, and gently rotate the piece to slide it out safely. Without that intervention, the calf dies, and the cow suffers catastrophic, often fatal internal damage.
And if the animal kingdom doesn't survive natural birth unscathed, human beings fare even worse when you strip away medical care.
Much worse, yeah.
Nemotin writes that the human data Petrikovsky presents is genuinely harrowing. Like, if we want to see what happens when modern obstetrics is completely removed from a human population, we just have to look at Afghanistan before 2001 under Taliban rule.
Right. That data is staggering.
It is. Imagine an entire country stripped of modern medicine almost overnight. Women were largely barred from receiving health care. And in that totally unmedicalized environment, the maternal mortality rate was a catastrophic 1,600 deaths per 100,000 live births.
To put that in perspective for you, the global average today is a fraction of that. When the regime fell and international support helped rapidly train and deploy thousands of midwives, the results were just immediate.
Like, how immediate?
By 2020 and 2021, that mortality number had dropped to roughly 620 to 638. Still tragically high compared to fully developed healthcare systems, sure, but a massive, undeniable reduction purely because trained individuals were brought back into the room.
And what exactly are those trained individuals doing that makes such a huge difference? Because I feel like it's not just about rushing in for massive cinematic emergencies,
No, not at all. They are managing the invisible biological mechanisms of birth. They're trained to immediately recognize pregnancy-induced hypertension or preeclampsia, which can lead to fatal seizures if it goes untreated.
Right, things you can't just fix with breathing exercises.
Exactly. They manage the third stage of labor, ensuring the placenta is delivered completely so the mother doesn't bleed to death. They understand how to manually stimulate a newborn that isn't breathing.
And Nemotin also highlights something as basic as an accurate calendar. Because without early medical intervention like ultrasounds, a mother might not even know her exact due date.
Which sounds completely harmless, right? Until you understand the biology of the placenta.
Yeah, explain that, because I found that fascinating.
So the placenta is a temporary organ. It's designed to sustain the baby for roughly 40 weeks. If a pregnancy goes significantly past that due date, say, into 42 or 43 weeks, the placenta literally begins to age and degrade.
It just stops working.
Yeah, it stops functioning efficiently, which means it starts starving the baby of oxygen and nutrients. It's a condition known as post-term fetal demise. And something as simple as knowing the actual date prevents this silent catastrophe.
Take Rh testing as another example of that invisible safety net. If a mother has Rh-negative blood and her baby happens to be Rh-positive, the mother's immune system can literally identify the baby's blood cells as a foreign threat.
Right, an immune response.
Yeah, her body will produce antibodies to attack and destroy the baby's red blood cells. But modern medicine solved this decades ago with a simple test and an injection called ROJAM. It's an invisible layer of protection. And when you strip all of these layers away and rebrand that abscess as freedom, the line between a normal Tuesday and a fatal tragedy becomes like razor thin.
It really does. But, if the biological reality is a stark matter of life and death, we have to ask why smart, capable people are actively choosing this profound risk.
Absolutely.
And the answer is not ignorance. The answer is trauma. We cannot begin to understand the free birth movement without acknowledging the very real emotional wounds driving it.
Yeah, because hospital experiences can be deeply alienating and frankly traumatizing.
Oh, completely.
Women have gone into labor feeling incredibly vulnerable, only to be treated like a biological product on a conveyor belt. They've been rushed with artificial hormones just because a doctor was nearing the end of their shift.
Right, or they've had their pain completely dismissed. Many have been subjected to unnecessary surgical cuts, like episiotomies, without ever giving actual informed consent.
And that kind of systemic disregard leaves a deep psychological scar. The medical establishment has often prioritized clinical efficiency over human dignity.
Yes, exactly. So when the free birth movement presents itself online, using language like dignity, privacy, sovereignty, and absolute control, that is an incredibly powerful, healing message for someone who felt violated by a hospital.
It makes total sense.
The desire for bodily autonomy is completely valid.
But let me push back on the medical establishment's authority here for a second, though, because modern medicine is entirely built around the concept of patient autonomy.
Right.
If I'm an adult cancer patient, I can look an oncologist in the eye, refuse a highly effective round of chemotherapy, and walk out the door. It is perfectly legal.
That's true.
Or if a Jehovah's Witness is rushed into an emergency room after a car crash, they have the absolute legal right to refuse a life-saving blood transfusion based on their beliefs. So why is a pregnant woman's choice to refuse a medical presence during birth treated any differently by society? Isn't her bodily autonomy absolute?
It's a great question, and the distinction really lies in the unique biology of pregnancy itself. It creates this incredibly complex two-patient dynamic that law and ethics really struggle to navigate.
A two-patient dynamic.
Right. When that cancer patient refuses chemotherapy, they're making a decision that risks their own life. But a pregnant woman in the active stages of labor isn't just risking herself. She is risking a viable, separate life, the unborn child.
So the moral ground shifts completely beneath our feet.
Exactly. While a mother's bodily autonomy is the fundamental baseline, courts and society recognize a compelling interest in the life of a fully viable child during an extreme, life-threatening emergency.
Right, the stakes change.
Yeah, if a baby is permanently brain damaged from oxygen deprivation or dies during a completely unassisted birth, the legal and ethical analysis often pivots to whether there was a fundamental duty to provide basic medical care.
Which is heavy.
Very heavy. The philosophical concept of freedom sounds beautiful on a podcast or, in an Instagram caption. But as Nemotin writes, when the hemorrhage begins or the baby gets stuck in the birth canal, the situation suddenly reduces to a literal matter of blood volume, oxygen saturation, and minutes on a clock.
Yeah, Nemotin uses a phrase that really stuck with me. He called it freedom without a break. Romance without emergency lights.
That is such a powerful way to frame it.
It is. And leads us to the really dark shift occurring in these online spaces. Because wanting a quiet, respectful home birth is one thing. But Nemotin's essay reveals how this movement takes that legitimate emotional wound we just discussed and actively weaponizes it.
Right, it crosses a line.
Yeah, it crosses a line from a medical preference into a closed, deeply dangerous psychological system.
It basically mutates into a toxic echo chamber. If you analyze the vocabulary used in these online free birth communities, it no longer sounds like a birth plan.
What does it sound like?
Well, modern obstetrics isn't just described as flawed or heavily medicalized. Standard hospital procedures are literally described using words like rape, abuse, harm, and violation.
Wow.
Yeah, medicine itself is personified as a malicious, predatory enemy.
And this is where Nemotin introduces a word he explicitly states he does not use lightly: cult. He argues that the ideological wing of the free birth movement fulfills all the structural characteristics of a generic cult.
And he breaks that down really clearly.
He does. First, it requires a sacred central belief. In this case, the belief is that the female body inherently knows exactly what to do, and medicine only corrupts that divine process.
Right. And second, it enforces its ideology through extreme purity language.
Like what?
Well, you aren't just aiming for a natural birth anymore. You are achieving an undisturbed birth, a wild birth, or a sovereign birth. And the subtle implication there is that if a doctor or a nurse is in the room, your birth is somehow tainted, dirty, or failed.
Which is so manipulative.
Right.
And third, it requires a designated enemy to unify against. Doctors, hospitals, and standard medical protocols fit that role perfectly. But what absolutely shocked me in the source material is that even highly trained, certified midwives are viewed as enemies if they bring too much medical caution into the room.
Yeah, the rejection of midwives is the clearest indicator of the radicalization. Even professionals whose entire career is dedicated to facilitating safe, natural, at-home births are rejected if they insist on, say, carrying a handheld fetal heart monitor or emergency oxygen.
Just because bringing a fetal monitor into the room implies that nature might fail, it introduces doubt.
Exactly. And in this ideology, doubt is contamination, which leads to the most chilling aspect of this cult logic. The movement systematically trains women to actively distrust rescue.
Distrust rescue.
Yes, it frames doubting the biological process as a personal weakness. Imagine being in agonizing, prolonged labor for 48 hours. The water is broken, there are signs of fetal distress, and the mother feels deep in her bones that something is terribly wrong.
Like her intuition is screaming at her.
Right. And in a normal environment, reaching for the phone to call 911 is an act of fierce maternal wisdom. But in this echo chamber, calling an ambulance is framed as a moral failure.
That is horrifying. It psychologically isolates the mother exactly when she is most physically vulnerable.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure we include Moten's massive caveat here, because he is very careful to state that a planned home birth is not inherently a cult practice.
Oh, a vital distinction.
Yeah.
A planned home birth with a qualified registered midwife, thorough prenatal medical screening to rule out complications like placenta previa, and a rapid rehearsed transfer plan to a nearby hospital if things go wrong, that is a completely scientifically grounded approach to maternal care.
Right. The danger we are unpacking today is specifically the ideological version of free birth, where the sheer absence of trained help is the actual goal, where rejecting a safety net entirely becomes like the ultimate purity test of motherhood.
It's the profound difference between wanting to give birth in a comfortable environment and wanting to prove a dangerous dogma with your own body.
Well, I want to play devil's advocate here for a moment, because when we start using terms like sacred beliefs, purity language, rituals, and dogma, it is incredibly easy to just label this movement a new kind of intense modern religion centered around the female body.
I could see why you'd say that.
Right, because people have always engaged in extreme religious practices involving physical endurance fasting for days, grueling pilgrimages, specific rituals. Why is this any different than a deeply held religious conviction?
It is deeply tempting to make that exact comparison, but Moten fiercely argues against it. He insists that equating this movement with religion is both intellectually dishonest and fundamentally dangerous.
Really? Why?
The distinction he draws between a mature religion and a cult is honestly one of the most profound insights in his essay. He points out that mature, humane religions across the globe and across history are intrinsically pro-life.
Meaning what, practically speaking?
Meaning that when a human life is truly on the line, mature religions will actively bend, suspend, or completely break their own ancient rules to save that person.
Oh, I see.
Take fasting, for example. In Judaism, fasting on Yom Kippur is one of the holiest obligations. In Islam, fasting during Ramadan is a core pillar. But if a person is ill, pregnant, or their health is compromised, both religions strictly command that person not to fast.
Wow, so the rule flexes for life.
Exactly. In Judaism, the principle of pikuach nefesh states that preserving human life overrides virtually any other religious rule. You are literally commanded to break the Sabbath to drive someone to a hospital. Seeking medical care isn't a weakness or a violation of the religion. It is a profound fulfillment of its humanity.
I see the contrast perfectly now. Because a cult does the exact opposite of that.
Right. A cult hardens its rules exactly when the individual is breaking under them. A cult demands adherence to the dogma, even if it requires sacrificing the person's life or the life of their child.
Which brings us back to the isolation.
Yes, the free birth ideology begins with the beautiful promise of healing trauma and reclaiming power, but it ends in total isolation. A mature religion is structurally designed to help a person face fear, pain, and mortality without ever being alone.
But this specific cult logic uses sacred-sounding language to intentionally place a mother and baby at maximum biological risk. It strips away the community of helpers and tells the mother that calling for a lifeline is a sin against her own body.
Exactly.
Religion bends its rules to preserve the sacredness of life. A cult places life at immense risk to preserve the sacredness of its rules. That is a devastatingly clear distinction.
It really is. It takes one of the most profound, physically demanding human events and wraps it in the vocabulary of liberation while, methodically cutting every safety net that actually allows true freedom to exist.
So, synthesizing everything we've explored through Moten's essay and Dr. Petrikovsky's stark medical reality check, birth is biology. It is magnificent, yes, but it is not an Instagram sacrament.
No, it's not.
Biology does not care about your aesthetic, and it definitely does not negotiate with ideology.
And the vital takeaway is that the answer to arrogant, dismissive, bad medicine cannot be the total rejection of medicine. Abandoning mothers to the harsh, indifferent realities of nature is not empowerment.
It's just abandonment.
Exactly. The answer has to be a relentless demand for humane obstetrics. We need a medical system that combines absolute dignity, patience, and respect for the mother with the rigorous life-saving safety of modern science.
Because a mother deserves to be listened to be treated as a sovereign human being, but she also deserves a door that opens quickly and capably when nature stops being gentle.
Right. If you've ever felt dismissed by a doctor, your desire to take back control is entirely justified. But true empowerment means having options, not removing them.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought for you to mull over. We've seen how this specific movement leverages algorithms and social media echo chambers to take something as primal and medically perilous as childbirth and successfully rebrands the very concept of medical rescue as toxic.
It's terrifying when you zoom out.
It is. It makes you wonder, if an algorithm can radicalize people against calling 911 in a birthing room, what other fundamental aspects of our human survival, community, and safety are being quietly dismantled by purity tests in your social media feeds right now? You might think you're looking at a clear, beautiful picture of empowerment, but when you look closer, the waters are deeply dangerous, and the life rafts have all been intentionally thrown away.
A chilling thought to leave on, for sure.
Until next time, keep diving deep.